Okay, we are live streaming now, I believe. Um, Patrick, can you hear me? This will all get trimmed off from the video eventually.
Hello?
Hey, Patrick, do you have audio?
No.
Do I have audio?
Okay. I might now too. I have audio. Do I have a microphone? I guess not.
Check.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
And do I have audio?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Sound is working everywhere. That is what we want to hear. This is the part of the video where I would not be live streaming this if we were not using Jitsi, but Jitsi doesn't have a pause live stream thing, and so I'm just going to set it up now and trim it off the video later.
Yeah.
Patrick, you can probably mute your audio now if you don't want your typing to come through.
Oh, sorry. Hello.
Welcome, Steve. And Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. There we go. How's it going?
Good so far. Got the video set up. For some reason, it says stream health yellow instead of red today, but I don't know what the problem is. Seems to be working okay otherwise.
I will post links we'll be using.
Got Mohan and Sly.
Yep, I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Kate, just tell me the point where you would like me to start. Actually, we're live streaming right now, but I will trim this video when it goes up on video. So tell me where you want the trim point to be, where we're going to officially start.
Sounds good. We'll give everybody just a minute or two, and then I'll let you know. I'll do our formal introduction and stuff.
All right. And my preference is for people to have their video on while they're talking because it helps me focus on the meeting. Right now, everybody's video off, which is fine. My video is off, for example. But once we start, let's do video if we can.
Hopefully you guys don't mind some cats running around in the background.
That actually is superior when we have that.
Okay, that's good. And we'll just give everybody just another minute or two, and then we'll do our formal start. All right. Let me share my
Is my audio working today?
Oh, what'd you say?
I was asking if you could hear me, but I guess the answer is yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can.
Yep.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, we'll
and
get.
I think the way Jitsi works, I don't have any way to make the live stream follow you, so it will show your screen as long as you're talking. So that's exciting.
Okay. All right. Good to know. So yeah, the link to the document that I'm currently looking at. So this is the link to the notes and the link to the Kanban board, which we'll be referencing, are both in the chat. So definitely, I recommend opening those. And then also these links are both in the meeting invite as well. So, but without further ado, we'll get officially started, Matt. So this would be a good trim point.
Okay, like clap the clapboard.
Sounds good. All right, so welcome everybody to part 2 of F28 planning. We made a lot of progress planning part 1, which we kind of got together. We thought about a lot of what the work is that we should consider for F28 planning. We've done a bunch of action items in the past week to make sure that we fully collect that information. But this is the real meat of planning here. So for this meeting, we're going to be really looking at what's going to be priority for us and what we can definitely expect to see as part of the F28 cycle. I do want to preface this by saying that, we have to do scoping, and we have to continue to gather requirements from people. So the way that we work with F28 planning or planning in general is that we're very reactive. So things will change and will be adjusted throughout the cycle. And I definitely encourage you to keep track of the priority pipeline for anything that changes, and of course the status updates as well. But today we're here to examine what information we currently have, what we currently know, and prioritize that. So are there any questions before we officially get started? All right. So basically, I know I just kind of summarized things, but I just want to reiterate. So our first goal here is we're going to review priorities from a very high level. We're going to talk about some must-have items. We're going to talk about some items that we're still waiting on some information from. I want to review the Kanban board with everyone. The Kanban board is on Taiga. So Taiga is what we're using this particular cycle to sort of organize and track our work. And it's much more organized and much more user-friendly, I think is the best word, than a spreadsheet. So that's really good. And then finally, the last thing that we will do is we'll just take a peek at next steps. So our action items, I already have some action items written there, and I'm sure more will come out of this meeting. So we'll get started with the first item, so high-level priority overview. So been working over the past week, as I said, to collaborate with everybody and to sort of talk to Matt especially and understand. Oh, yes, spreadsheets are evil. So yes, we're working with everybody to try to understand, what are the big ticket items that we're going to have to work on for F28. And in this list, this really should be ordered. Oh, wow. I can't believe I just did that. I don't even know how that's possible. Let's see. Here we go. All right, perfect. This is an ordered list of the priorities that we've come up with. I'm going to review it, and then I want to obviously open this up for feedback or discussion. So anything pertaining to Fedora continuous integration efforts is going to be our top priority. The second priority we're going to have is anything related to modularity efforts. The third thing that we're going to have is anything related to automating composes. The fourth thing is anything from Atomic. And then the fifth thing is Flatpak support. So I'll pause here, let everyone process that. Does anybody have any specific feedback on these items or have any questions or want to discuss?
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Do any of those encompass like minimizing the amount of time it takes to do a compose?
So are we talking about speeding up composes then?
Yes.
Okay. So their update for that is automating composes and speeding up composes are two very separate things. And a lot of the work to speed up composes we found is actually done in Punji. The person that has historically worked on Punji with us is Lubomir Sedler. Lubomir is actually transitioning to a PDC role, and a new hire will be filling in for his role. So it's something that we do plan on reaching out to that person with. But Lubomir did caution us that, that particular effort, speeding up composes, is not a trivial effort. And it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time. So while that is something we should definitely get on the list of things to consider for this particular release, we can't say yet exactly what we'll be able to accomplish within this cycle. Does that help to answer your question a little bit?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Are there any other questions about these items? All right, cool. And we'll kind of drive back to this again when we review the Kanban board. The next section, I just want to point out some things that are absolute must-haves that we're going to be doing. The first one is any of the change set work. So just to review, we have the formal change set of items that will be in F28. Some of those items, not all of those items, actually require release engineering efforts to some level. We don't anticipate that any of the work required by release engineering for the change set is major, but there is some stuff there for us. So that will definitely be something that will fall in the F28 cycle. The second item there is the piece of feedback from the F27 retrospective that was voted as a top priority. So I sent an email out, but just to review, the most voted item in that retrospective in terms of what folks think we should address is focusing on more project management oversight and helping project management, helping to people to really focus on what has to be done. So those two items are definitely going to fall within the F28 cycle. So just wanted to kind of call those out as things that we're also doing, but they're not part of like larger efforts that are ongoing in Fedora.
And Sly is specifically here to help us with that, right, Sly?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Yes. And I think most people on this call know, but just to reiterate, so I will be stepping off of the team. I probably will be officially off the team by mid-January. I will still be available, obviously, for any help anyone needs, and I will definitely still be assisting Sly and answering your questions and helping to transition her on. But yeah, Sly is definitely one of the key components of this particular action item here. So does anyone else have any questions about this section before we move on? All right. We'll move on to the last section before we jump onto the Kanban board, which is far more colorful and exciting than this document. But so there's definitely, like I had mentioned when we started the meeting, when we do planning, we're going to continue to plan and be reactive to changes throughout the release cycle, of course. And we're waiting on a little bit of information on 2 areas to be able to prioritize specific deliverables. So I just want to call those out. The first one is things related to Fedora CI efforts. So we don't have anything concrete from that team yet, but we're still working on communicating with them and getting that information. The second one is modularity. I know right now there is ongoing work and an investigation on what that's going to look like moving forward. Release engineering is definitely going to be a part of that. I know I've talked to Steven, and one of the action items I already have listed for us is that we want to make sure we get a little bit more of release engineering visibility in there and review. But once we understand exactly, what that's going to look like to release engineering, for sure, we'll definitely get those items prioritized. So is there any questions on this section? All right. Oh, you guys are easy today. All right, so we'll move on to the Kanban board. So I'm going to be drawing parallels between what we had said previously with, I hear echo, sorry.
So, Kate, real quick, do we not think it's a problem that the speeding up composes is not part of the high-level priorities? I feel like that's definitely something that I thought probably would be something we wanted to attack. And I realize Lubos is moving on, and a lot of that work is related to Punji. And I didn't actually realize he was moving on until you told us today. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that speeding up composes helps every other high-level priority that we have in that list.
Dusty, I can speak this a little bit.
Okay.
I had a conversation with some of the people on the release engineering team. I don't know if Rob's on the call here. And yeah, basically that was scoped as being a huge amount of work. And the idea of automating the composes gives us some of those benefits. QA can kick off the composes in the middle of the night, or composes will happen automatically in the middle of the night, and without necessarily needing to have around the world rel-eng people on the clock all of the time to respond to things. And QA said that they thought that would be, if we're choosing sort of between those two things to work on, they would prefer the automation, and since that's easier work, that seemed like that was the thing to prioritize for F28. I still hope to have the shortening the time thing on F29 or soon time frame.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
But as a stakeholder from Atomic, if you would like to raise that again, I think we can look at it more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely going to have that one in my, request for Christmas list for as many Christmases as it doesn't exist.
See, let me add an action item here because I know this is something that we want to do. We want to reach out to the new hire, and I'm going to just put his initials because I have no idea how to spell his name. To start discussing this. Sorry.
Dusty, I'm just going to throw out there for you that I had discussed with Lubomir a bit about what it would take to get up to speed enough for me to work on that in Punji. And he was telling me that it would take, a couple months to get familiar, like 3 or 4. So that's really why we're holding off for the 28th cycle, because someone walking into a role, we want them to be able to feel successful, and putting them into a mission critical thing when they're just learning the ropes of Punji, that's setting them up for not feeling too good about their role. And I don't think any of us want to do that to somebody, but it's definitely on our priority list. We just have to have somebody that's has that knowledge, and it's a not easy first project. It's not even easy for the person who's been doing it for however many years Lubomir has been doing. So that's kind of where that's at, if that makes it it helps out at all.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm very sad to hear that we won't have him working on that project. He's definitely been somebody that, you can go to with a request and he just gets it done. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, Lubish has been great, and it'll be great because we'll be able to work with him on his new role as well. However, yeah, I think as Rob said, the person that is stepping into his role, and I don't know if I clarified this as well, is new to Red Hat, period, as well. So there's definitely some ramp up time there. So are there any more questions or feedback around that? I do want to address what Randy also wrote in the list too.
So I can't necessarily see what Randy wrote here, Kate. I had one other thing to add. I was noticing that our 2 highest priorities here are also where it sounds like we're on hold, kind of waiting for release engineering requirements from those groups. So does that mean that in this prioritization, we kind of have to be prepared for any of the priorities that we set up here for the other 3 plus miscellaneous topics to kind of take a back seat to whatever's still to come? Am I understanding that right?
Yep. No, that's absolutely correct. And I keep using the word reactive because I think that really describes what we're going to have to do here. So once we fully understand, coming from these efforts, Fedora CI, modularity, what is needed from release engineering, we'll have to consider, what we've currently prioritized, what we've currently scoped out, and see how that sort of all fits together. Because those two projects do take priority over anything else that we're looking at right now. Does that help to answer your question, Paul?
Definitely. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I do also want to discuss what Randy wrote. So Randy added one right after Flatpaks, which is containers in Bodhi. Randy, did you want to speak about this one?
Sure. Sorry, it took me a second to find the unmute button.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, this is something that I had previously thought was extremely high priority in this early spring this year. Modularity kind of came in.
Oh, I think we lost you, Randy. Is that just me, or?
No, I can't hear him either.
Gone.
Okay.
So I think that what he's meaning to say is that until like last spring, we were told that we needed to have container support in Bodhi by F28, and then modularity came along, and everything had to drop for modularity. So where does that leave containers for Bodhi?
Matt, would you be able to speak about this one, or I can definitely give my perspective too, but your perspective is probably more quality, I guess is the right word, or I don't know.
So what problems does that solve for us immediately?
Sorry.
I think that today people build containers and they sit in the candidate registry, but there's no workflow to get them pushed out other than pinging a release engineer to do it by hand. And that was Adam Miller, I think. And so Bodhi would provide the familiar machinery to build your container and then queue it for an update and have it go through the process to get out the door in the semi-automated way that Bodhi is.
Okay.
The other thing that Bodhi gets us is notifications, where outside of like the current process, we kind of just grab these are the things that went out, where by having it run through Bodhi, one, it's out of band, so it's not only at the 2-week or 3-week or 4-week or whenever we push the containers, but they also have an update to say, hey, we've got this new container, it contains XYZ application, you go use it, and provides a bit better communication about what we are shipping and what's available for people to use and what's come.
Basically, one of the main things is it makes containers less unique and less manual, because as said, like right now, all of the container pushes are done manually on a per request basis.
Okay, so to me, this falls under the atomic requests, I guess, although it's not really necessarily atomic specific. Atomic is our container-focused operating system, and I would kind of lump it under the whatever level 4 priority atomic requests things.
Yeah, and one of the items that I had under the atomic request, I'm not as familiar with it, but the Fedora layered image build system, one of the items I had under there was automating that process so Adam doesn't have to sit down, and take one entire day every 2 weeks to do a release for those, which I think would be completely covered if Bodhi understood containers, if I'm understanding everything correctly.
Okay. Yeah, that is a very, very expensive way to do it.
Although we can definitely say Adam won't be worried about that at this point.
Yes, that's
sad face.
No.
I'm smiling through my tears. Yeah, we have a new guy coming to work on FLIBs at this point. But the point is well taken and I think correct.
Okay, yeah, I did make that change. And when we go through the Kanban board, Dusty, I was actually hoping you could talk a little bit about what you're looking at from the atomic side. Would that be okay if we kind of revisit that once we look at the Kanban?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Before we move on to there, though, I want to make sure, does anyone have any other sort of concerns or questions or feedback on this list here? I think it sounds like no, but well, let's revisit the Kanban board. We're kind of going to go over this again a little bit more in specific detail. So the first things you'll see on the Kanban board is our must-haves. Things are like the change set work and the retro action item. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we don't have tickets filed for anything in regards to Fedora CIO modularity right now. So the first tickets we're going to be looking at is the automation for composes. So this is currently the Kanban board we have, and we're going to be looking here in the next priorities column. Everything on this board is currently tagged as an F28 item. I just want to call out that there are 2 items currently in a needs info state. These are still being investigated, and once we have more information on those, we'll, as I mentioned before, react and sort of determine where those things fall, if they need to fall in F28. And then we do actually have one item that is currently in progress right now. We're going to spend most of our time focusing on next priorities. I'm going to make my screen a little bit larger. I hope that helps. Does that help at all, or can people see it?
No difference, really.
Okay. In that case, I definitely recommend following along. I did place the link in the chat. It's also in the meeting invite. And then, of course, this is on our public Taiga instance. And I'm going to read out the ticket numbers as I go along. So hopefully that'll help you follow along. So the first 3 items here,
it might help if you hide your bookmark bar there. That'll give a little bit more room on the screen.
Oh, sure. Show bookmarks bar.
A few more pixels.
There we go. Does that help at all? I mean, I'm really destroying my browser window right now, but does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay. That was like a yeah, but no, not really.
Let's go through it.
I definitely recommend following along. It's even easier to kind of jump into these a little bit and read some of the details. The first 2, and I'll try to be as descriptive as I can. The first 2 cards that we have in our next priorities, it's number 974. It's annotated binaries, and number 973, Ruby 2.5 support. These are both coming from the change set. So these are items that we know we have to support as part of things that are going to be in F28. I won't click into the cards unless there are specific questions. There are other change set items that will likely be added to here, but these are the ones that we currently have.
I don't know if you can hear your audio is kind of non-existent.
Oh, your audio got all crazy too, Paul.
It was fine for me. I think it's you, Paul.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh no. Hopefully it was just some wacky connection or something like that. But definitely let me know if I go crazy again. But so for these 2 here, like I said, these are coming from the change set. Does anyone have any specific questions on these at all? Right. The third one here is the ticket that we just filed. This, once again, was the F27 action item. This is working on adding more project management oversight. One thing that I will say about this, and I will actually open this card, is that I did write in here is, there has to be some investigation on how this can be improved specifically, and probably some investigation on how we can measure that improvement. So I did add those details, and this will be something that will have to be go. So I just wanted to put my note. I hear myself. No, okay, that's better. Does anyone have any questions on this particular issue here? Okay. All right, so once again, we don't have any tickets filed right now for the Fedora effort. So we see 2 tickets right off the bat for the automation epic. You'll notice that these 2 have a green dot next to them. And the green dot is what is representing that release candidate composes should be automated. This is an effort that Rob is going to be doing. I know you're on the call, Rob. Did you want to talk about this a little bit? Just give a brief overview of where you're going with it. Oh, we can't hear you if you're.
So,
Rob. Oh, sorry.
We're going for the first steps. We are scoping out. Mohan is giving me. Am I okay now, or?
Yep. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yep. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. So where we're going with is the first step is we're scoping out, and Mohan and I have been going through all the different bits. We're breaking it down into this basic process. We are going to create the individual modular elements that will allow Mohan that he'll still run them manually, but they'll be an automatic item.
Mm-hmm.
Then once we have that done, we're going to orchestrate it with AWX, and Kevin and Patrick and I have already had a very brief discussion on that. We are going to be doing the composes with on-demand compose service tool. We had a large get-together on the Fedora release engineering channel last week, I think it was, where we talked through it, and Jan Kalusa already has some of that work ready to review and look at. So we're moving along with that. And the idea is to take the existing pieces that Ralph Bean and his team have been doing with the factory stuff and reuse as much as we can, hopefully 100%, and plug it into a service to where when things run, it's all running on the Fed message bus. So we're going to be reacting to those and firing off jobs with AWX as it responds to Fed messages. So that's kind of like the long-term goal, is that, you know, everything is going to react on the Fed message bus, and it'll all be basically release engineering's role at that point would be to, if something dies in a horrible fire, as our message says in the channel, we'll go in and look at what's going on. But the idea is to try and get that process from end to end fully automatic, so that RelEng is not blocking. Like if QA is working on something, they can send it through the pipeline and have a product at the end as long as it composes and doomed, and that all that is responsive on the message bus. But we're breaking it up into small pieces and basically getting the pieces together that we can fire off from AWX and doing that one piece at a time, so that we can basically improve release engineering's life from them now in the here and now, which is to say, you know, some of the steps that are manual, we're going to make them an automation, so that we can just run that and then, you know, run it, let it go, and there's no human error involved, there's no timing involved, and then eventually tie those to the message bus. So hopefully that gives a good overview of where this is going, where we're going to start, where we're going to get to, and then what we're going to look like at the end of this. So
awesome. And yet, thank you, Rob, for that overview. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just know you've been doing some good work on this, so I thought people would be interested in hearing about it. I know that probably a lot of folks might have questions or suggestions. I don't want to spend too much time on that, since we do want to focus on the planning, but does anyone have any questions they want to ask Rob before we move on? All right, sounds good. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Kellen. Okay, so the next item is actually where we start to get into atomic work. Dusty, once again, I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, but I love if you could talk a little bit about, from your side, what you'd love to see from Fedora release engineering in F28.
Sure. So I actually had a conversation with Sly earlier today about this. Kate, yep. Sorry I missed the meeting yesterday.
No problem.
But I just created a few cards, okay, and they are numbered 980 through 983. If you want to pull them up, we can look at those. But I don't think it's anything too crazy or too unexpected.
Okay,
so,
we're on 980 right now.
That's disappointing, Dusty. I'm disappointed.
Well, I can throw some things out there, but I'm trying not to be too. All right, there is one thing that's kind of crazy, but I'm choosing to not really request that right now, because basically it's a new thing from Colin upstream, which is basically related to how we actually build OS trees and how we deliver them to a user. Basically, we've seen a lot of issues with managing OS tree repositories for different users of Atomic Host, not necessarily Fedora users, but just in general downstream users as well. So he's added a mode to OS tree to be able to actually build and deliver all content via RPMs. So there would no longer be an OS tree repo. It would all be delivered via RPMs, which is kind of interesting. And he sent an email to the RelEng list about this to kind of get feedback from RelEng about the approach. I'm on the fence right now. I kind of like our OS tree repo approach, but we'll see how that goes. So there might be some asks there in the future. I'm not anticipating them for F28, but as we know, things change all the time. So let's talk about the more boring things that we want to achieve during this release. So one of them is the card that she has up right now. It's an ask that we've had for a while, but we haven't prioritized it necessarily. And that's just because we've been busy and RelEng has been busy. So it just means that it hasn't been a high priority up until this point. And
for the people on the stream, that's the OS tree unified repo card.
Yes. Are there people that aren't able to see the shared screen?
I have the belief that what will happen while you're talking on the thing is that it will automatically pop up the person who is talking, because I have no way of controlling that.
Yeah, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's all the people's different faces, and if you just click on Kate, it locks on her shared screen.
Yes, that works for me, but I don't think that the live stream is actually following what I'm seeing.
I see.
So it is another user.
Gotcha. All right, yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's what I think is happening.
I'll try to make sure I properly radio announce everything. Okay, so yes, OS tree unit. Now I'm getting
real quick. Whoever's the moderator, there is under the moderator settings, everyone follows me. Well, I guess Kate. If you click on the settings and click everyone follows me, that should lock everyone onto you.
Oh, interesting. I'm not the moderator of this meeting though. Does that make a difference?
I'm the moderator, and everyone follows me is not helpful.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's not going to work for this, Dennis.
No worries. I'll radio announce. Okay, so OS tree unified repo. I've got feedback again. All right, now it's gone. Okay. So OS tree unified repo, basically, if you know what a Git repository is, you know that in a Git repository, you can have different branches. So like some of our RelEng repos we have F26 branch, we have F27 branch, etc. OS tree repos are very similar to Git repos. Basically, it's a repo and you have branches inside of it. In the past, what we've had is for each release, we've had a different repo for every release. This makes it somewhat tricky when you're doing upgrades from one release to another for static deltas and stuff like that. So what we want to do is actually have a single OS tree repo or a single Git repo with multiple branches in there that represent the different versions of Fedora that are out there. This one's not too tricky, I don't think. Me and Patrick have talked about it quite a bit, and we have a plan to actually make it happen. The staging repo, which is where we build everything and then sync it out to the production repos, is already a unified repo. So not a whole lot to talk about here. It's just something that I wanted to put in here as a work item that we're going to try to work on for this release. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have one quick addition, that the workstation repo is also already unified.
Yes. So we, during this past cycle for 27, we actually made Fedora Workstation an official thing. Now that Punji is being called by Bodhi, we added Workstation OS tree to get updates. So now that that's an official thing, we have an official prod repo for Workstation OS tree. And we decided to go ahead and make that one a unified repo from the beginning, because we knew that's where we wanted to go with Atomic Host as well. But that's mostly it. If there's not any other questions, we can move to 981.
Yeah, let's definitely do that, Jesse. So for those following along, this is issue 981, creating 2-week atomic artifacts during Bodhi Punji runs. So take it away, Dusty.
Okay. Yep. So this one, I mentioned earlier, Bodhi started calling Punji as a way to create the updates. shortly before Fedora 27 actually got released. I appreciate the work from Patrick and Adam and Randy and everybody who worked on that one. But this has enabled a ton of other things to happen for us. One of those is now that Bodhi is calling Punji, we can actually do more during that update run. And one of those things that we'd like to do is go ahead and create QCOWs and stuff like that during the update run. This makes it so we don't have to wait for like 8 hours or 16 hours or however long it is between the time the Bodhi run finishes and the next Fedora 2-week Punji run is scheduled to begin to get images to test and do things against. So that would just basically help us, align our tooling a little better. And also this will enable us to create OS trees with versions in the OS tree embedded that matches the version of the media that we create, which is basically the date stamp and the compose ID and a few other little pieces of information. So that's one thing that I think we know we have planned, but I wanted to put that officially on the docket. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Wouldn't this make the daily update slower, even though we only need it every 2 weeks?
So the truth is we only release every 2 weeks, right? But the fact of the matter is that we actually test every night, right? And new content comes in every day. So we actually do want the artifacts, for every update that comes out. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, fair enough.
I actually don't think we don't need to do updates every time we push updates. We need to update the OS tree and the artifacts that go with it every time there's something in updates that changes in them. So if we could tie in the Bodhi workflow so that it knows that these 100 RPMs are in the OS, the Atomic Host OS tree, and only makes those things when one of those RPMs changes. I think that's where we want to get. That way, we do make it. We make everything every time we push today. But Colin filed an issue last week that quite often we're making the artifacts, but they're exactly the same, and we should figure out a way to only do it when we need to do it, not just because we're pushing updates.
Right. That's definitely an enhancement.
I think people for Colin sent a pull request for Punji to make that work for OS tree itself. So then I would say that Punji would need to know that, okay, we didn't compose a new tree, so we don't compose the new ISO.
Right. So this is
a Punji level thing.
Yeah, overall, that's mostly an enhancement, Dennis, but there is an RFE on Punji for the feature of saying, hey, if this OS tree, if there's no new update for this OS tree, then I don't need to create new images. Basically, some sort of dependency relationship that says these images down here are actually a derivative artifact of this other thing. If this other thing either failed or finished with no work to do, then don't create the images. So I do have an RFE for that already open.
Right, that should happen, but the check, if we actually need to do anything, needs to happen before we ever run Punji. We should never run Punji if we know that none of the packages in the OS tree changed.
Well, it's the same Punji run as we do for updates.
So I don't mean to cut in, but it sounds like we're definitely getting a little bit more into the details here, and I kind of want to make sure we cover everything else. So would it be okay if we could continue this conversation offline and jump to the other atomic issues that you have, Dusty?
That's fair.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you everybody for this awesome output. I truly encourage that you continue this. I do want to make sure that we cover at least the big grounds here. All right, so we'll jump to issue number 982, and this is OS tree mirroring. And once again, take it away, Dusty.
Yep. So this one is mostly a nice to have. But if you talk to release engineering, I think, or infra probably is a better word to use. I think it's higher priority for people like Patrick, because basically right now what we have is our OS tree repos are housed on a single server or two that are serving out this content over HTTPS. And anybody who's using Atomic Host, who's pulling updates, is pulling them from those servers. What we want to do is make it so that we're not hitting Fedora internal servers, and we're leveraging our mirrors or specific mirrors who have said, yes, you can mirror this content. I think we have a plan for that already. I just wanted to add it to the overall Taiga board. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
That I think we still had an OS tree RV open that would need to be fixed, but otherwise, yes.
Okay.
It shouldn't be too hard.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And then I think the last one you said was just 983. Okay, yep. So we're on 983 now, and this is Atomic. Work to better enable releasing multi-arch atomic hosts.
Yes. This one mainly has to do with previously when we built all the tooling around releasing atomic hosts, most of it was very single architecture specific. So for x86 64. And recently we added the fact that, recently we added PPC64 LE and AArch64. This was also another thing that was enabled by the Bodhi to Punji transition, and that's why I'm really happy about the fact that that happened. But one thing that we realized as part of this is a lot of the tooling around it wasn't quite there for the other architectures. So we pretty much did the bare minimum that we could possibly do to actually release the AArch64 and PPC64 LE stuff, but there's a lot of stuff around the edges that we haven't done yet. One of those is the Fed messages that get sent regarding an Atomic 2-week release don't have information about the other architectures. This means, I believe a part of that also means that like the Fedora website can't grab information about the other architectures to update itself. Right, and thus the Fedora website itself doesn't have information about the other architectures. So there's just a few fringe pieces of work that need to be done around releasing multi-arch atomic hosts that I'd like to do during this cycle.
Awesome. And Dusty, would it be okay to give you an action item to add these details to the tickets? That way, because I know like I'd never look back at this and remember all of the great things you said. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there in my first comment, I have a few items, and I'm gonna in all of these tickets I actually added a comment because I don't know, when I create a story it doesn't allow me to actually add a description.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or I don't think it does. Maybe it does for other people, or maybe I'm just dumb. But basically what I did is opened a ticket and then added comments or added a comment as the description.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Yeah. That's really good. As long as we get some details so we can keep our heads on straight.
Yep.
Awesome. All right.
And we don't need to talk about this more. I just, yep, that's it.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for going over that, Dusty. I just want to make sure that we got some, that out there. And once again, I don't mean to cut off any conversations, but I encourage that you take those, after the meeting, because I think they're really valuable. I just want to make sure that we get to review everything that we can during this meeting. So for the final item that we had on our list, that was Flatpak support. I actually opened 3 Taiga cards for Flatpak support. This was after I heard back from Owen. So Owen says from Fedora release engineering, we need 3 things. I'll read those, and please let me know if you have specific questions. The first thing that is needed is number 977. That's OCI support for registry.fedoraproject.org. The second thing that we need is 978, an index for registry.fedoraproject.org. And the last thing that is needed is 979, and that's some OSPF support. In these tickets, I have specific details from Owen. This work was previously being pursued by Adam, which, like, tears streaming down my face, we'll make sure that we pass that on. But that covers what is needed from Flatpak. So does anyone have any questions on these items here?
And does anyone know the details of the OSBS support work? I thought Owen was working on that himself, so I guess I'm not sure what the division is between RailEng. Is it more development or just deployment?
That's basically deploying a new version once all of the patches and everything gets merged, etc.
Okay.
Yep, and I think
most of these tickets are just deployment stuff, like deploy the registry on Fedora instead of RHEL, and deploy this new application that he developed. So it's all just deployment stuff.
Okay.
So I personally think most of this is probably rather infra than RailEng.
Okay. Do you know specifically, like, which tickets that would be? Would it apply to all three, or?
The first 977 is definitely infra. 978 waits for RailEng info before and then becomes infra. And 979 probably also infra, but is awaiting stuff as well.
Yeah, I would say they're all infra.
Okay.
It's more about it's more about deploying the needed support than the RailEng portion of it will just be making sure that we're pushing the bits when we build them.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you don't mind, because I don't want to just switch back and forth, would you be able to capture an action item so that we could sync up with infra on these tickets, just to make sure that we properly hand them off, please? Would that be okay, Sly?
She's muted.
Oh. Okay. Well, if someone doesn't mind, even if it's not Sly, just throwing that in the doc, that would be super helpful. Okay, so we'll continue down in the rest of the list just to make sure that we cover some of these other items. So just to review, these other items here, they're not part of that bigger overview list that we viewed, but there are things that, if we have time, they're great to pick up. So I definitely wanted to review a few. We probably won't have the chance to review them all, so I encourage you to go take a look after this meeting and let me know if you have any questions and concerns. And we'll, at 1:55, I just want to review a couple of the major sort of next steps. So with that being said, the first one I want to call out is number 801. This is create a full list of expected deliverables per release. Did anyone want to discuss or add anything about this one?
Who owns that?
I don't think anyone owns it right now. Or actually, nope. Kellen, you own it. Yep, so Kellen owns this one. Are there any other questions about this one in particular? And yeah, just to kind of reiterate, so in cases where, like, for example, Kellen is assigned to automation and this one, the automation would come first. So if Kellen had time to pick this up, that's great. But we can definitely look at when we, next steps, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we assign this work. If someone doesn't have work to pick up, we could possibly transition that to them. So just something to note. So yeah, we'll look at the next one then. The next one is 631, and this is stage validation of end-to-end workflow. Does anyone have any particular questions on this one? Okay.
Kate, do you know if there is anywhere a list of what those gaps currently are? That the card seems kind of missing the detail.
I think that nobody knew at the time, or a lot of it was the people who are responsible know. I think that a lot of that got closed because a bunch of that was Bodhi stuff.
Yes, this came from an F16 QA retrospective. So this is an antique over here. So it looks like there's some details in here, but I know as part of this task, whoever would pick it up would definitely have to scope exactly what this is referring to and exactly what we would need to fulfill it. So yeah, I'm sorry that doesn't really address your question, but it hopefully that provides you a little bit more context. A lot of these items do have Pagger tickets related to them, and anyone that does will have that link in there. And if you click into there, you'll probably be able to get a little bit more detail. And this one specifically, as I had mentioned, it looks like all that feedback came from an F16 retrospective.
Yeah, sorry, Kate. And I think maybe I wasn't clear. I was looking at the 631 card instead of 801.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Here, we'll open that one. Let's take a look here.
I didn't mean to get ahead. I thought we had transitioned to that card, so I apologize if that was.
Oh yeah, confusing. No, we had. I totally misunderstood your question. That was my fault. Yeah, this one right here. No, this one we definitely need to get more details regarding. I don't know if I put it on the F28 pad, but one thing that is still on the list, and I definitely will make sure we follow up. This is something we'll actually have to ping Adam about, because this was work that Adam was doing. So I know he just left us, but we'll have to reach out again. So.
And it's mostly infra rather than Relinge as well.
Okay, that's really good to know.
I mean, we will benefit from it, but the actual work comes from infra.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And yeah, I'm glad we've identified a few issues in here that really don't fall in the Relinge queue, because we'll definitely pass those along to the right people. So it's really good. Thanks all for sharing that information. I'll just quickly go over the last few. The next one, number 831. This is one particular user story that's in an epic, and that epic is on documentation, and that is on documentation for everything. This is something that Kellen is also assigned to. However, once again, the automation definitely takes priority over this, and some of the documentation work will actually overlap with that because Kellen has advised that it would be smart to document and then automate based on that. So this is something that we have down here at the bottom, but we expect to see some documentation going on in parallel with the automation. The last two is there's one 879 Atomic Host Production Beta Composes, and number 963 Composes should use the new Punji SCM dict feature. So those two are at the bottom of our queue. So those are the lowest priorities. And once again, things at the top are, with the exception of, things that are in the change set or just things we have to do in the retro is something we're doing. Those are the top priorities. So I definitely just want to briefly touch on our next steps. For the next steps, one of the things that we'll be doing, we have our biweekly grooming meetings for Fedora release engineering. We'll be taking a look at these tickets. We'll make sure that they're assigned to folks. We'll continue to follow up with people that we need to follow up with. And I think that's generally what will be going next. once again, I just want to stress, like, this is our evaluation of priority and work for F28 today. But planning for us is a reactive thing. So we will certainly continue to, sort of change and scope out work as we need to. And I encourage you to keep track of the priority pipeline to monitor that. So I'll stop there. This is essentially all we had to go over. Are there any other questions before we finish for today?
None here.
Okay. All right. Well, happy Friday, everyone, and hope you have a great weekend.
Kate, thanks for bringing us through these over a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Kate. This was awesome.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's been really great conversations, and thank you to everybody who's contributed. This is really great stuff.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.